Hello and welcome to the fourth installment of my grading of all of the base game cards. If you want insight into the grading system, check out the description or click on the link in the top right hand corner to get to the first video of this series, where I explain it all. But let's get started. Asteroid is the most basic space event out there. It is comparable to the standard project Asteroid, which makes sense, I mean they even share a name, and ranges from being a bit worse than it to significantly better. If you do not have a titanium card and cannot hit anyone's plans, then this card is actually worse than a standard project, as it costs you 3 MC more when bought in the draft. But that scenario is highly unlikely. Most of the time you will at least have a space card in hand or will draw one later down the line, and that makes this card 3 MC cheaper than SP Asteroid. You can also often delay playing this card for a few gens to find a moment where you can nuke someone's plans with it. And also, space events are the class of cards that has the most potential bonuses catered towards them, albeit from space discounts, event rebates or others. So Asteroid can become much better if you have a few of these cards. Additionally, if you're playing with Elysium, this is a somewhat cheap event that can be played in the early game for Legend. One last thing to keep in mind about Asteroid: as a planned hate card, there are many situations where you want to cut this in the draft, even if you do not want to play it. So in my opinion, Asteroid ranges from pretty bad to significantly above average, and most of the time it's a fine but not game-breakingly strong card that you regularly want to cut from the draft. It's a B tier card for me. As compared to other similar space events, it is cheap but also low impact. Compare Asteroid Mining to Titanium Mine. In terms of development, it gives double the power for more than 3 times the cost if bought from the draft. Even 4 times the cost if not. Of course, development is not everything. You don't win a round of TM because you have the most production. Much of Asteroid Mining's cost stems from the 2 points and the Jovian tag on it. If you pursue a Jovian strategy, Asteroid Mining is a really good card to play on the early or mid game, and if you have 2 or more Jovian molds, it is even worth it to play in the late game. However, playing this early on will prevent players from passing you any Jovian molds and vice versa. It's a bit of a vicious cycle. Of course, there are also cards and corps that make Asteroid Mining much better. And sometimes you want to cut this from someone that has a Jovian mold in play already. But all in all, I'd give this card a C tier placement. It's often too expensive or just not what I want in my game. Most of us will agree that Asteroid Mining Consortium is the most evil card in the game. It's a swing of 6 prot with one of your opponents, and if played in the early game, is devastating. It is not as flexible as planned hate cards or card like Sabo or Raiders, as those cards can also be played in the late game for their full effect. Because AMC affects the economy of the player, it needs to be played in the early to mid game. The fact that you also need a titanium prot to start with, that you cannot pay for this card with titanium itself, and that it's sometimes just worthless because none of your opponents decides to develop titanium prot, knocks this card down a notch as well. The Jovian tag can sometimes be useful to secure Rim Settler or Diversifier, and means that in very rare cases AMC is worth it to be played in the super late game if you have 2 or more Jovian molds. I'd say this card is definitely game breaking in some situations, which qualifies it as an A tier card. I'd say it's a low A tier card though, as there are many cases where you do not need this card whatsoever. Beam from a Thorium Asteroid is a seriously strong card if played in the early game. It offers a point, 3 somewhat useful tags, can be paid for with titanium, and basically yields 6 heat prot. 6 heat prot will yield 6 or 7 temperature bumps if played in the first gen, and the fact that half of this prot is power prot just increases your flexibility. If it were just for that, Beam would be A tier, but it has 2 major drawbacks. First, it is really pricey if you don't have titanium laying around, and second, that Jovian tag requirement can be really problematic in the early game. Jovian cards are somewhat rare, and while it's true that some of them give titanium prot which helps with playing Beam, a Jovian strategy doesn't synergize too well with having massive amounts of heat prot. For an effective Jovian strategy, you want a long game and established card draw to have more chances to draw Jovian molds. In that case, you don't need the temperature track racing up. All in all, I'd say Beam can sometimes be exactly what you need, and then it is really strong, but most of the time I don't like to see it in the draft. It's also only really useful in the early game. C tier for me. We started the video with Asteroid, and we ended with its bigger brother. Big Asteroid. Same as its sibling, this card ranges from slightly worse than 2 standard projects in value to much higher, but it has a few advantages over the basic Asteroid and therefore has a significantly higher ceiling. Why? It can all be summarized in action efficiency. If you play Big Asteroid, you do 2 heat steps in one action. This is extremely relevant in the fight for the bonus ocean on the temperature track. You can combine Big Asteroid with a standard project asteroid, or even better, with another card that performs 2 temperature steps, to do 3 or even 4 steps in one go to claim the bonus ocean before your opponents are able to. Big Asteroid also is slightly better value than Asteroid. It costs a combined 30 MC, gives a rebate of 12 in the form of titanium, and so 1 temperature increase costs you 9 MC. With Asteroid it's 17 minus 6, so 11 per increase. One slight benefit of Asteroid is that it is so cheap that if you have media and optimal arrow braking, you can turn titanium into cash with that card. You would need much more titanium to do the same thing with Big Asteroid. But that's very niche. All in all, I think Big Asteroid is a bit better than its smaller brother, and therefore lands in A tier. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know in the comments if you agree with my ratings, or if not, how you would have rated them differently. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing. And lastly, please check out my Twitch and my Twitter. See you in the next video.